People lived in the middle of the desert for over 3,000 years and built one of the most powerful civilizations in history. How? Because of one river. I'm Professor Sagewell, and today we're following the flowing thread that made ancient Egypt possible, the Nile River. It wasn't just a source of water, it shaped nearly every part of Egyptian life. You've probably seen pictures of pyramids, pharaohs, and golden tombs, but none of those would exist without the Nile. It was Egypt's food, road, calendar, and inspiration, all in one. So grab your sandals and water jug. We're going on a journey to see how a single river gave rise to an entire civilization. The Greek historian Herodotus called Egypt the gift of the Nile, and even thousands of years later, that phrase still holds true. Look at a map of Egypt today. You'll see one long, thin strip of green cutting through miles of golden sand. That green ribbon? That's the Nile. It stretches more than 4,000 miles. The longest river on Earth. Every year the Nile would flood its banks and leave behind a thick, dark layer of soil. That soil was perfect for growing crops like wheat, barley, and vegetables. The Egyptians called it Kemet, which means the Black Land. It was dark, rich, and full of life. Unlike the dry desert they called Deshret, or the Red Land, the Nile turned dry, dusty desert into a land full of farms, homes, temples, and towns. Without the river, Egypt would have been just sand. And for farmers, the river didn't just provide soil, it provided a schedule. The entire Egyptian calendar was based on what the Nile was doing. Each year had 3 seasons: the flood, the planting, and the harvest. Farmers planned their entire lives around this rhythm, and it rarely failed. When the floodwaters came, people prepared. When they went down, seeds went into the wet soil. Then came the harvest and the celebration. But how did they know when the flood was coming? They didn't have weather apps or satellite alerts. They watched the stars. Every year, just before the floods, a star named Sirius appeared in the early morning sky. That star became a signal, a cosmic warning to prepare. Temples held ceremonies, farmers got ready, and Egypt listened to the sky. They even built stone tools called nilometers to measure how high the floodwaters rose. Too little water, famine. Too much, disaster. Just right, a prosperous year. The Nile wasn't just a farm tool. It was a highway. Boats glided up and down the river carrying grain, bricks, stone, tools, people, and more. Going north? Let the river's current do the work. Going south? Use sails and catch the wind. It was efficient and genius. The river connected cities, villages, temples, and quarries. It made trade possible. Farmers sent crops. Stone cutters sent granite. Markets stayed busy. Without the Nile, ancient Egypt would have been a string of isolated spots in the desert. But with it, it was one connected world. Most Egyptian cities were built right next to the river. The capital city of Memphis, right along the Nile, so were Luxor, Thebes, and later Alexandria. Being close to the Nile meant access to food, water, and travel. It also meant protection. No need to cross the desert to get supplies. People bathed in the river, washed clothes, fetched drinking water, and caught fish. Crocodiles and hippos lived there too, which made things exciting. Even bricks for homes and buildings were made using Nile mud. The river shaped not just what people ate and how they travelled, but what they lived in. Even death followed the river's lead. Most tombs were built on the west bank, where the sun sets each night. To the Egyptians, the west symbolised the afterlife. So when you died, your spirit followed the sun's journey across the sky and into the next world. The Nile wasn't just practical, it was sacred. Egyptians worshipped it, honoured it, and saw it as a divine gift from the gods. One of their most important gods was Hapi, the god of the Nile flood. He was shown with long hair, a gentle smile, and a round belly, a symbol of abundance. People sang to Hapi. They made offerings. They thanked him for bringing life each year and prayed he wouldn't bring destruction. In Egyptian mythology, Even the sun god Ra travelled by boat. He crossed the sky by day and sailed the underworld by night, just like the Nile's endless flow. Thousands of years ago, Egypt wasn't one united kingdom. It was two lands. Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. That sounds backward, doesn't it? But it makes sense if you follow the river. The Nile flows south to north, from highlands to sea. The river linked both regions like a natural thread. And around 3100 BCE, a leader named Nama united them into one kingdom. Nama wore a special double crown, red for Lower Egypt and white for Upper Egypt. It symbolized one land, one people, and one pharaoh. And once again, the Nile made it possible. It wasn't just a river, it was the glue that held the country together. But running a kingdom that large wasn't easy. Egypt stretched hundreds of miles with no phones, cars, or internet. How did the pharaoh send orders? How did cities stay connected? The answer floated on the water. Messages were written by scribes on papyrus scrolls. Boats carried them up and down the Nile from palace to temple to village. The river became a postal route, a highway and a communication line, all rolled into one. And because of it, the pharaoh's reach extended far and wide. Even small towns stayed connected to the capital. Farmers knew what taxes were due. Temples followed royal orders. And the kingdom stayed organized. The Nile didn't just grow crops, it grew civilization. It brought order, unity, and a sense of national identity to a land surrounded by desert. But even with big cities and royal crowns, most Egyptians were everyday people. Farmers, potters, fishermen, bakers, weavers, builders, all shaped by the river's routine. They bathed in the Nile, fetched water in clay jars, built homes from river mud, and gathered to wash clothes on sunny afternoons. Children played by the shore, fishermen cast nets, boats passed by with passengers waving hello. Life flowed with the river's rhythm. Even the daily chores, cooking, farming, hauling water, were shaped by what the Nile allowed or delayed. It controlled not just seasons, but hours. So how did the Nile really shape ancient Egypt? It brought rich, black soil that made farming possible in the desert. It gave Egypt a calendar based on the rhythm of the floods. It powered boats for travel and trade, connecting cities across the land. It helped unite Upper and Lower Egypt into one kingdom. It carried messages and supplies from one end of the country to the other. It shaped daily routines, from hauling water to building homes. And it inspired Egypt's religion, myths, and even their idea of the afterlife. All of that from one extraordinary river. Let's see what you'll remember. It's time for a quick quiz. Question 1. Why did Egyptians build nilometers? Answer. To measure how high the Nile floodwaters rose each year, so they could predict crop success or disaster. Question 2. What were the two lands that were united to form ancient Egypt? Answer. Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north, united by the Nile around 3100 BCE. Question 3. What was Kemet and why was it important? Answer. Kemet means the Black Land, the rich, fertile soil left by the Nile's floods that made farming possible. Now it's your turn to think like a historian. Here's a classroom discussion question. If you had to live in ancient Egypt, how would your life depend on the Nile? And what would you be most grateful for? Thanks for exploring with me today. From pyramids to papyrus, so much of Egypt's greatness started with the Nile. And that's what makes it one of the most important rivers in all of history. If you enjoyed this journey down the Nile, be sure to subscribe to The Curious Professors for more big questions and surprising answers every single week. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking the big questions.